Okay. You know, it's okay to be wrong sometimes. It's okay to not know things. It's okay to say, you know what? I have no idea. And that can be really hard for people. Especially for people whose sense of value and sense of worthiness comes from what they know. Like, let's say you're really smart and you've always been told, oh, you're so smart, you get your value out of you made straight A's, and so you're seen to be a good student. Or whatever the case is, if your value comes from what you know, this can be especially hard. But it's okay to be wrong. How many times in life have you thought something was true, and then later you find it was not at all true, it was completely wrong? That happens. That's certainly a part of life. It's part of growth. It's interesting. You could almost say a person who never contradicts themselves never learns a single thing. If you believe the same thing your entire life, you haven't learned a single thing. It's okay to be wrong. Really, it is. I've seen this even, it stopped a number of authors who, though it's interesting, they'll write a book, and as they're writing the book, they're actually going through a transformation process. And they go through the process, and while they're going through the process, everything they're writing about is very valid for them at that point in their journey, at that stage in life. And by the time they finish the book, they're a completely different person. They've transformed pretty significantly. And by the time they get to the end of the book, they go back and look at the beginning and they say, the person who wrote that book doesn't even exist anymore. What I wrote about doesn't even seem to apply to me anymore. It doesn't even seem like it's not useful to me anymore. It's a pretty strange realization to write a whole book and say, this doesn't even seem valid anymore. I've been writing at my blog now, youaretrulyloved.com, for a couple of years. And sometimes I'll go back and look at some of the old blog posts, and it's not necessarily that they're wrong per se, but it's just I had a limited perception then. And if I were to write on that topic today, I wouldn't write the same stuff that I wrote back then. And I've actually contemplated, deleting some of my old posts. And it's interesting. At a certain point, it doesn't seem to be so much about right and wrong as it is more stages or levels. It's like rungs on a ladder. Eventually you go beyond, at one point you can look up at this idea or this concept and it seems like that's a concept that you're moving towards. And you get there, and yeah, when you're on that rung, it's a valid rung for you. And then eventually you keep climbing and you look back down at that and you say, I'm not there anymore. It's not appropriate for me to be talking about that. I'm not there. But that doesn't mean that you have to invalidate that rung. Still, for other people, that's up for them. That's, a very useful understanding for them to grasp. Other people may be where you once were. And so in that sense, instead of seeing things as wrong, you can recognize that that is appropriate for a particular level of consciousness. And it's not really about right and wrong as much anymore. It's just where am I and who am I? And what energies and ideas are reflective of where I am. And so it's okay to contradict yourself. You'll find as you grow and as you expand, you can go through many different stages to find where you believe this. And then you think that is true. And then you think neither of them are true. And then you find that both of them are true. And then you find that all of the above, it's just this, and it's just that, and it's neither of them, and it's all of them simultaneously. And it's like, you're sitting here juggling paradoxes to where two things which should be completely opposing, completely opposite, are actually standing hand in hand, and you find that simultaneously two completely different ideas are both valid. Paradox. And as you go deeper, it's not so much anymore about right and wrong. It's like everything is one. And from what perspective are you looking? Everything is the one looking at the one. Everything you're looking at is the one. Every perspective is the one. Everything is the one. The one is infinite. And there are an infinite number of ways of looking at the one. Some perspectives, sure, may be closer to love and light. They may be more fearful or less fearful, of course. Some ideas may be more in alignment with unity, or more in alignment with separation. They may be more in alignment with reality. They may be more in alignment with delusion. Yes. And so again, here we have everything is the one. Everything is a valid perspective on one level. And yet simultaneously, you have some truths are better pointers than others. So again, we're dealing with paradox. All of them are equal and some are better than others. Some are closer than others. See? It's another one. And so again, coming back to the main point, it's okay to be wrong. Being wrong is just a recognition that you've expanded, you've changed, you've developed. And I know there may be fears about being wrong, like, especially if you're a teacher, you know, I don't want to tell somebody the wrong information. I don't want to give them bad directions. But ultimately, you're not responsible for what other people do with what you say. You are simply responsible for your actions, for being the best that you can be, for being as honest and integrous and loving as you can. What results out of that? Find out. What other people do with what you say, whether they do what you say or whether they completely misconstrue and misunderstand what you say. Once it's out there, it's out of your hands. It's no longer your responsibility. And again, another interesting point, if we want to go back to paradox and say it's not even that, if it's all one, you can take responsibility for everything. Because if we say we are creating everything, then I'm responsible for all of creation. So again, there we go. Are you responsible for everything? Yes and no. So we can find that there's many levels to talk about things on. And as we progress, we find, you know, you work up through different levels of consciousness and your perspective will change. Your understandings will shift. Your consciousness will grow. It's all part of the process. So again, it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to recognize that things change. It's okay to say that what I said before I no longer agree with. You can contradict yourself all the time. Look back and you say, huh, look at that. I used to think that was the case. Look how much I've grown. It's not a bad thing to be wrong. I mean, you could believe that it is and experience that, sure, but that doesn't have to be the case. So